Hi everyone, it's Heidi here from the Nest Kids CPR and Allergy, and today I am interviewing Jessica, who is, there we go, that's a better view, who is a mum who's recently had to deal with anaphylaxis. And I was just saying to Jessica before we hit record that it's just so important to hear this from a parent's point of view, because we as healthcare professionals do all these things in emergency situations to children every day, and you get used to it. It never becomes normal. You don't go home thinking, oh yeah, that awful situation is normal, but you get used to dealing with it. And you have to kind of, in a way, detach yourself from what could have just happened, or, what did happen, because, in healthcare, that's kind of what you have to do sometimes. But nothing comes close to seeing it from a parent's point of view, someone who's actually had to do it. A lot of people that carry EpiPens won't ever have to do this. And especially in such a young child, where they can't tell you, oh, I feel this and I feel that and I'm dizzy and etc. So I'd just like to welcome Jessica here now. And yeah, we'll hand over to Jessica and just tell us a little bit about how old your little one is.
All right. Well, my little one who had anaphylaxis is he's now 10 months. He was 9 months when it happened. And unfortunately, he's been kind of hit with like several pretty bad allergies. And just in the space of a couple of months, I have just learned so much, going through all the misconceptions, trying to deal with the fact I did not believe that this could happen to me or my family. Even though my eldest son has an allergy too, I kind of never thought that I would belong to the anaphylaxis club. And here I am.
Yeah, it kind of sucks, but it sounds like you have identified and dealt with the worst case scenario.
Yes.
So at least now, in a way, you know what you're dealing with. Well,
yes.
You've probably dealt with the most the symptom that confuses people the most.
Yes.
The one that didn't look like how you would think it would look when you haven't seen it.
Yeah.
So your other son has allergies as well?
Yes. So my eldest son, he's 4, he has a tree nut allergy. And from when I first started seeing him have hives, when he was just over 1 till now, I have my understanding of allergies and the potential for anaphylaxis has completely just opened up. I believed my eldest son was only allergic to hazelnuts. When I got him tested, it was all tree nuts. And I hadn't realized that, for 2 years of his allergy, I'd still been giving him tree nuts without realizing how dangerous that could actually be without getting kind of support from an allergist. And then, I got prescribed EpiPens for him and kind of felt like a fraud because he'd never had anaphylaxis. But I thought, hey, how great to have these pens in case I go overseas and something did happen. Or in case I saw someone else's child have anaphylaxis, there I am prepared with adrenaline, and had no idea that, a few short weeks later, I'd be using it on my 9-month-old baby.
Yeah. So it was your other son's EpiPen?
Yes, it was my other son.
Yeah.
Well, actually, yeah, I think it was my other son's EpiPen, but I did have a prescription for my young one to get EpiPens as well at the time.
Yeah, I mean, it would be the same one anyway, same dose anyway, yeah. So how was your youngest then diagnosed with allergies, and which allergies?
Okay, so pretty much, when he was quite young, under 3 months, doctors kept commenting on how dry his skin was and like he had a lot of eczema. They suggested I cut out dairy, which I did, but it helped a bit, and then he kept getting eczema. So I kind of just kept having dairy. And then the pediatric allergist for my other son commented, he has very red cheeks. When you introduce solids to him, I want you to make sure that you follow these guidelines. And she gave me information. And I was kind of like, yeah, he's just going to grow out of the eczema. No big deal, like my other son. So then when I started weaning at 6 months and giving him, some finger foods and things like that, I just noticed I gave him a smear of egg, like a tiny smear of egg on toast. And in the aftermath, he was like a bit blotchy. And I thought, oh, that's strange. But I had given such a tiny amount that the reaction, I really couldn't tell if I was overthinking it So I called my mom and said, can you come in a couple of days? We'll try again. I tried again with just the tiniest amount, and once again, saw some redness. I thought, oh, okay, there probably is something going on here. Okay, said I'll just stop that for now, and I'll, try something else. So then a few days later, I tried dairy, and there was just this tiny bit of, milk in his porridge, and it just was like this rough rash instantly, and they last, like, his reactions kind of would last for about 10 minutes. And I just was thinking, okay, dairy as well, that's not great, but okay, we'll just kind of keep going. I actually had contacted my oldest son's pediatric allergist to have an appointment with her via Zoom, but was waiting for that. And in the meantime, I tested peanut butter, just a tiny bit rubbed inside his lip. I had heard, like, definitely don't rub it on the skin because that can cause sensitization, but I rubbed it in his lip, and then I kind of high-fived my husband because there was no swelling. I said, oh my God, thank God there's no allergy to peanuts. And then a few minutes later, we start seeing he became very agitated, started crying, grabbing at his throat, and he had hives all down his arms. So, I think that was probably the moment where I realized how serious these allergies were probably going to be. And when I had an appointment with a pediatric allergist, she ordered a very expensive, a lot of blood tests for me, which confirmed allergy to those three things. Plus, they said a couple of tree nuts and sesame. So once I kind of got that diagnosis of, okay, there are these allergies and they're very, they could potentially be serious, she said to me, look, I'm going to prescribe you an EpiPen because I think that he is a candidate. He's high risk for anaphylaxis. And it was
I've lost you.
I started, trying to retest things that I thought, okay, so there's like this web of potential allergens. Oh, you there, Heidi?
Yeah. Sorry, you froze there for a second.
Oh, did I?
Yeah.
Oh, I hope. Oh, I wouldn't have caught that. Which bit did you hear me get up to?
So that you went to see the pediatrician gave you a script for the EpiPen.
Yeah.
You froze for about 30 seconds from that.
Oh, that's annoying. Always has to happen. Well, what I was saying is that I was heartbroken. I was truly heartbroken and very overwhelmed at the prospect of what I didn't know what was coming. And then I started to say, okay, all I can really do is try to test for as many foods, just keep trying to introduce new things to his diet. And I was just so overwhelmed thinking, is there a beef allergy because he's got a dairy allergy? Like you read things that's potential. Is there a chicken allergy because of his egg, allergy? Is there olive oil? Because I used to use olive oil before I was aware that you shouldn't use that on the skin. It was very overwhelming because the web of potential allergens, or like what he was going to be allergic to, was so vast. And so then I started testing, and unfortunately, very early on in saying, okay, let me test, legumes. I'll start with green beans, which he had a couple of times as one of his first foods, but I had a question mark over whether it once gave him hives. I sat down and gave him his food. I was very excited because there was no immediate reaction. There was zero redness on his face. There was really nothing that I would expect to see. He wasn't grabbing his arms and scratching them or his ears. There was no watering in his eyes. And then an hour and a half later is when the reaction actually happened. Do you want me to tell you about the reaction now?
Yeah, so that was green beans.
Green beans, like I thought of a green bean as the same as a carrot or a potato, just
I know
food.
We do see, so things like vegetables, like root vegetables, if you like potato, carrots, things like that. We don't see much. Obviously, there's always going to be someone with an allergy to things like that. But peas, green beans, things like that, I'd say we see that often enough for it to be not that surprising, unfortunately. not obviously not as often as egg and milk and nuts, that they're,
Yeah.
you know, always going to be up there. But yeah, I'm not overly surprised. And that's the thing, when we do food challenges, even in the hospital, we keep children for 2 hours. So
Yes.
there's that potential. It's much rarer to have it that late, but it happens. Well, obviously it happened to you, but you know, normally it's within 20 to 30 minutes, but it just goes to show that it's unpredictable, which is where the fear comes from, you know.
Yeah, you know, and it really was, because I'm thinking I'm testing something that is so harmless, you know.
Yeah, it's unpredictable. You don't think of it as like that. So what happened? What did you note? Like, what was the first inkling that something wasn't right?
Well, it was so I tested the food about 6 p.m., which I know you really shouldn't be testing foods that you potentially think could be a risk late in the evening, but sometimes you just don't know. And then, you know, took him out. He was having a great time playing with his brother. His brother went to bed. He's sitting there playing next to me while I'm doing the washing, folding the washing. And it had been like at least an hour and a half, maybe even 2 hours. And the first thing I noticed was that he's sitting there, but he's kind of closing his eyes like he's falling asleep, but he's smiling and he's happy. And I just thought, that's weird, because usually a little baby gets tired and they get cranky. I kind of thought, okay, I'll go change his nappy, offer him a breastfeed, see if he wants to go to sleep. Took him into the room, and I just saw, like, when I'm changing his nappy, you know, he's kind of very limp, but jolting his body every so often. And then, you know, that kind of makes you think, okay, let me see what's going on here. He wouldn't feed, his cry sounded quite weak, you know, and it was just very confusing, because I'm like, okay, he looks normal, but then again, something is off. And so I kind of held him, and I just looked at him and saw, okay, his eczema that's always on his cheeks is completely gone. He looked perfect. His ears went colorless. And then I just noticed, okay, wait, what really kind of kicked in that this is serious was his lips were pale, and then his gums were pale. So at that point, I just picked him up and took him out to my husband, and he obviously saw how worried I was, and he said, is he okay? I said, I don't know if he's okay. So my husband took him, and from when I first noticed he was looking sleepy to when I gave him to my husband, this was like within 3 minutes. So it's all very fast. You're just kind of like thinking, okay, something's not right. Gave him to my husband, and he just started passing out in my husband's arms. So at that point, you know, it all looked very quiet. You know, there was nothing, there was no swelling, there was no redness, there was no vocal gasping for air. It was just like my baby slowed right down and became still, like a little doll, you know. And of course, he was a bit floppy at that point too, because he was passing out. So my husband, you know, kind of jumped up with him in his arms, and that's when it's just like the training that I've done and the reading of everything, you know, the obsessive mum Googling kind of kicked in. I said, no, okay, it's lie down, it's, you know, EpiPen, ambulance. And I knew those 3 things in that order. So we got him laid down, and I called an ambulance at the same time that I was trying to inject the EpiPen, which was a bit crazy because I was so focused on injecting the EpiPen, I couldn't focus on what the ambulance operator was saying to me. Oh God, it brings it all back trying to speak.
I know, you've given me goosebumps, and I'm like, I'm used to emergency situations, and I give an adrenaline so often that I come home from work and it's all like normal. But hearing it from, it's just
something different. It's like I try to explain it as like step by step what happened, but the truth was it was like a dream. You know, the dreams we have where you're trying to move fast, but you're stuck in mud, or you just can't kind of be as fast as you can, as you need to be. But anyway, like I always had the EpiPens on my dining room table in a first aid bag. So I grabbed that out, you know, pulled off the blue safety cap and injected it. I actually kind of undid his clothes because I forgot you can do it through his clothes. Now, the great thing was the EpiPen was so easy to use. Like it was just so easy. And I kind of remembered the things like don't keep your fingers at either end, and injected it. And although this was like so terrifying and it's so emotional to talk about, the it was actually a very, very good experience for us to have in some ways, because I had lived in fear of this moment, not knowing what the moment would look like, not knowing how I would cope or what we would do. And I'd been living in fear of this for months. And suddenly when anaphylaxis was actually happening and I injected him with the EpiPen, it was just like, oh my God, these EpiPens are magic. The adrenaline just started to reverse it very quickly. He opened his eyes and he just lay there, you know, very still watching us, but we could see he was with us. And the ambulance took like kind of less than 5 minutes to arrive, which was, you know, obviously that doesn't happen all the time, but even if they hadn't, I had another EpiPen ready to go and I think we would have been okay. So they arrived and they do like a check. We went off in an ambulance to Westmead. And, you know, but my son didn't need any other adrenaline. He didn't need anything else. He kind of just gradually regained his color and his alertness, and he became himself probably an hour or so later. So terrifying thing to have happen.
Oh my God, so terrifying.
But
you
we survived.
Yeah, it sounds like you acted pretty quickly. Sometimes when a second dose or a third dose needs given is because it's not treated quick enough, which is never the fault of anyone, especially a parent, because, you know, it can be confusing enough identifying anaphylaxis, but often that's why they need a second dose.
Okay.
So yeah, you acted quickly. I bang on and on and on about keeping things simple. Like with the nest, everything's like 1, 2, 3. Like the action plan is an A4 page full of information, and I never go through everything with people because you just are not going to remember all that. You just need to know this is, identify it, lay them down, give the EpiPen.
That's it. And
like, you don't need all that other stuff on there. Just save it for a rainy day. Read it when you're out of the woods.
Yes.
That's all you need to do.
Oh, Heidi, my little one's just woken up. I'm just going to grab him and I'll be right back.
Go for it.
Here we go. He must have known we were talking about him.
Oh, hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
You're the subject of this big interview here. Hello. Goodness. Yeah, so it also sounds like, I mean, just in my opinion, from the symptoms that you said, that his respiratory system may not have even been in play there. Like his respiratory system may have been acting normally, but that was his blood pressure dropping.
Yes.
Because the anaphylaxis makes the blood vessels all big and leaky, and the body just can't pump the blood like it should, which is why they go pale and floppy. And that's, you know, that's where the dizziness or collapse or pale and floppy comes from.
Yes. And it's funny because as you know, obviously on the plans, it does say that for young children in particular, pale and floppy is a big sign, and it says you're only looking for one, you know, it only requires one kind of symptom of a severe reaction for you to need to epi, and that you may not see any of those mild or moderate allergic signs before anaphylaxis. And it says it right there, but you just don't think that that's what it's going to look like. You know, like definitely it was a very silent kind of anaphylaxis.
Yeah, I'd say about maybe 80% of the anaphylaxis I've seen has started with a persistent cough. Okay. Not hives, or, you know, the hives often come very quickly. Yeah. But it's usually a persistent cough that just comes out of nowhere. Okay. And it then turns to a wheeze. The second we can hear that wheeze, we give adrenaline, because in hospital we have the beauty of, that's our job, we're waiting for it, we can jump on it the second it's there. So it's kind of our speciality, so we don't have to think about all those other things going on in life. They're not our children, we're there purely for the allergy. So yeah, that's the vast majority of what happens. They don't always have, often all those hives and redness and sneezing will come out after we've given the adrenaline. Okay. They'll look like a raspberry. They're just bumpy and red, and you know, all kind of big swollen ears, but that's fine. Like, we don't care about that.
Yeah.
It's the, you know, it's obviously the previous ones, but yeah, the fact that he just went pale and floppy is completely, yeah, that's frighteningly exactly what can happen without all the other fanfare of sneezing and coughing and grabbing. And yeah, it's really terrifying. So it is atypical, the fact that it was green beans in an hour and a half. That's more slightly unusual, but you sound like you dealt with it really well.
Yeah, it's and I think that's, you know, just that when you get this diagnosis and you read so much, and unfortunately some of what you read can make you feel quite scared, but the good thing is just kind of reading and watching videos about how to handle anaphylaxis. It really just helped in that moment to not have to try to figure out what end of the EpiPen I'm using. Like, I knew it all down pat. It's very simple. And it's kind of funny because everyone thinks that I will now be more anxious than I used to be, but actually the reverse has happened. I used to be far more anxious than I am now, because being through the worst case scenario, we managed it. And those EpiPens now, like, my trust in them is just like, wow, you know, I actually kind of feel a sense of freedom, because he has this condition right now and I can't change that. But those EpiPens, if they come everywhere with me, you know, I am secure in knowing what they can reverse.
Yeah, exactly. And you've also dealt with the most silent part of it all.
Yes.
So, you know, if that's to happen again, the chances are it will be more obvious for you, because you might have this persistent cough out of nowhere, or suddenly erupt with hives, or, you know, it might be a bit more obvious. But you've dealt with the most difficult part, I'd say. The most difficult recognition, because the recognition is such a sticking point for everyone. So yeah, I completely get that. Yeah, I'm glad that it's empowered you and not gone the other way. And how did you feel when you were first, so this might go back to your older son, like when you were first diagnosed as a family with food allergies and how to live, like how did that affect you, or how did you feel when you got that diagnosis?
Well, with my first son, you know, I was very like, it really didn't affect me too much. I kind of thought, oh, like, no big deal. We can avoid that. That's, you know, just pretty simple. I was a bit upset when a skin prick test revealed that he had more tree nut allergies than I thought. I thought it was just one. But jump forward to Tommy, devastated, absolutely devastated and overwhelmed, and just, you know, really not imagining, how do I live the type of life that I have envisioned I'm going to live? You know, holidays, going overseas. We have family in Armenia and Lebanon. You know, allergies are not as known there. You know, what would we do if we needed an ambulance overseas? Excuse me, did you hold on a sec. You know, just absolutely mind blowing that this could happen to me, to my baby. And I don't know why it was such a shock. Obviously, like, it's like 10 to 13% of kids under 1, I think, have an allergy.
10%, yeah, under 1-year-olds. But I don't know. I mean, I feel like the thing is that with parents of children with food allergies, that, you know, it can be life-threatening, and food is everywhere.
Exactly.
And it's like you can't control what other people are doing around you.
Yes, and that is the scary thing, I think, with Tommy, that feeling really kicked in, because, okay, maybe these days people are very careful with nuts around kids, but who is careful about eggs and dairy? I mean, it's in everything.
And even people who think they're going to be careful, if they don't get it, which most people don't because they've never had to live with it. You know, anyone like my age or older grew up in a world where allergies were rare.
Yeah.
And they've skyrocketed in the last 20 years. You know, so people, they didn't, like, you know, when I was at school, there would have maybe been one child at the whole school with a food allergy. Now there's like a couple in every class.
Yes, absolutely. And I did find that, you know, you have, everyone wants to help you and understand, like, there's no issue with that, but trying to explain how deep that they actually have to think if they want to truly cater and ensure an environment is safe. It's very hard to get people to understand, like, thank you for all your efforts you made, but unfortunately, like, the environment or is still kind of unsafe, and really it's hard for the parent because you are the only one who knows exactly what level of care you need to take to ensure their safety. You can't just leave your kids anywhere to be looked after by even people you trust. Like, maybe one day I'll get there, but there is so much that goes into ensuring every single outing is safe.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I think, yeah, I can understand that as much as I can as a parent who doesn't have a child with allergies, because I've spoken to so many parents, and I understand that I can just leave the house and not have to consider. But even thinking about, I've just been to the supermarket with my two, and even that, I still think that the whole nut things in Coles where you just scoop your nuts out, I'm like,
yeah,
how is that okay?
Everything.
They're at like child level as well. I mean, at least at the moment they're all in bags because of COVID, but that's, I just, things like that. I'm like, I'm always trying to think like an allergy parent, and like, oh my God, this must be so stressful.
Yeah, it is. I think that when he's at an age where he's participating in things like going out to restaurants and just standard things, or getting like hot chips from a shop and we have to check if it's cooked in peanut oil, or I think when I get that, I'll feel that more. Now he's kind of more under my control, so it's more making sure that he doesn't put things in his mouth. But even that, pretty much every time I go out, I notice that he kind of gets a bit red and irritated in the eyes and face, and I just know that he's put something in his mouth, even if it's a toy, and he's kind of had that secondary, like, contact with something. He's constantly coming into contact with his allergens. And all I can really do at this point is make sure that he doesn't actually eat it. Okay, if he's having little minor flare-ups, I actually can't stop that really without driving myself insane.
Yeah.
As long as he does not actually put that food in his mouth, that's kind of as much as I can really control.
Exactly. So, sorry, just to recap, he has dairy and milk allergy?
Yeah, so dairy, egg, sesame, tree nuts, peanuts, and now that I've discovered green beans, I'm going to do a skin prick test to have a look at some like lentils and things like that. But really, it could be all legumes or it could be some of them.
Oh, well, he's got an 80% chance of growing out of the dairy and egg.
Yeah, so, that's good. I'm really hoping he does.
Yeah, so huge majority of children grow out of, by school age, but even way before then. So that's great, because it's not so much just about the raw ingredient, is it? It's what it's in. It's when it's hidden, and that's what I find with like relatives and friends. They're like, oh, who knew that ham had dairy in it? People don't know, and how are they going to know if they haven't needed to? It's very difficult. And then after you gave the EpiPen, that actually made you feel better in a way, or
definitely. It took me just over a week. I was at first like, there's a huge adrenaline rush in the parents. So for like about 4 days, this tightness in my chest just would not disappear, but I also didn't feel emotional. I kind of just felt, okay, yep, everything's fine, I'm totally fine, my baby's totally fine. It was like a denial kind of thing. And then after day 4, it was like a flood of emotions, a real sense of sadness, a real just like, I don't know, just feeling like I can't live the same life I used to live, and I don't know what my life's going to look like. But after that, I just gave myself a bit of space. I kind of canceled some social events. I was just very real with everyone about what I'm feeling. I'm not feeling good. I just want time to myself. And through that, I've kind of arrived at a place where I actually feel good. I feel like, okay, I'm just going to focus on what my goals are right now, and what's in my control is I am trying to get him to have as diverse diet as possible. So every week I'm just like really focusing on the wins of the foods that I introduce that he loves. I'm cooking with them. I'm kind of getting a new thing happening at home with like how I cook. As I said, like emphasizing whatever, like now that I know he can have beef and that's not an allergy, that's like a major, what's wrong? A major win for me. And
I can't say I've seen in the 5 years I've been pediatric allergy nursing, I haven't seen much of a correlation between the whole chicken, egg, beef, milk.
Okay. See, again, it's just things you read and you don't know.
Yeah. In fact, I don't think I've seen any correlation between it.
Okay,
So,
well, I hope there's not. That was more something that I had read on like a mum's, kind of like a mum's group. You don't always know whether it's people's opinions or,
yeah, I'd say that could have come from a doctor somewhere that probably wasn't a specialist. That's usually where these things come from, and then they grow arms and legs. But I mean, if it is, it's definitely not something I've seen in 5 years of just working with children with allergies.
That's good to hear.
We see chicken and beef allergy, but not linked with dairy and egg. Yeah.
Okay, good to know. Good to know indeed. So I've just been kind of like focusing on whatever is in my control. I'm focusing on that. I've booked in. I actually feel quite good. Like I've felt a lot worse kind of leading up to the anaphylaxis in terms of the pressure that being an allergy mum kind of puts you under. So I feel pretty good, but I'm taking preventative measures because my life is going to be more stressful than my friends who don't go through this. I am going to have have difficult conversations with people or put boundaries in that other people may find uncomfortable, but are necessary for me to keep my child safe. And I also am going to have to still continue to live a life that is great and, and gives him the same opportunities as other kids. So I don't want to be wrapping him in cotton wool. So I've decided to speak to, a psychologist just to try to like prevent myself from getting stuck in the stress of this life I'm in.
That's really sensible. That's really sensible because people, especially mums, do not look after themselves. And if you're not healthy, your children are. My son is basically like mirrors my mood and my everything. Whenever I'm like shitty and horrible and I don't really realize it, he is. And I'm like shouting at him, and then I take a good look at myself. And I've, on 3 different occasions now, I've turned my mood around like pretty quick on purpose, and he's just like a different child. So my other son isn't like that, but my eldest, and it's incredible. It is incredible. Whenever his behavior spirals, I'm like, oh my God, it's just like looking in a mirror. So if we don't look after ourselves, which inevitably a lot of the time we don't look after ourselves as much as we do our children, then they feed off it, they know. And if you have hang-ups and anxieties around food, which no one would blame an allergy parent for having, then it's going to go on to the children who not always, but it's just definitely can be an issue around food, and we don't want that. Not in the world we live in. There's enough stresses out there around things like that. But I'm glad. It does definitely sounds like you've dealt really well with it, and you've got a good attitude about it.
I mean, I am positive that there'll be some more hurdles to come, and there will be times that I'm not feeling so great. But this is the path I'm on now, so I just have to do what I can to to not just survive this, but to still enjoy his baby years and his childhood. And oh, what's wrong? Have your milk? Sorry, he's squawking.
Oh, no, that's all right. That's all right. No, that's great. Thank you so much for telling us. I'm sure that's going to be a big comfort to so many. Just the whole thing, the recognizing, the giving the EpiPen, the calling the ambulance, how you've dealt with it after, explaining about how you felt when you had the diagnosis, because I think lots of people feel exactly the same.
Yes.
Not sure what's normal. Yeah, it's really rough. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
We'll let him feed in peace.
Yeah, he's like, he likes, to really laze around at the buffet here. So.
Oh no, that's right. I miss those days. I miss that. I'd be like, I can't do anything. I'm breastfeeding. You'll have to get me a drink, get me a remote, get me this.
Exactly. Oh, well, it was lovely to chat, and happy to answer any other questions, or if anyone in your community has any questions, not a problem if they want to ask.
Definitely. Are you on our Facebook page or in our group?
Yes, I'm in the Facebook group. It was
excellent. All right. So Jessica, we'll we'll tag you when I pop this video out anyway in a few weeks. But yeah, thank you so much.
Not a problem.
All right.
Lovely to chat, Heidi.
Thank you. Take care. See you
Bye.
later. Bye.
Bye.